Math makes sense. That is the topic of the day, and I want to know what you think. So our topic is going to be, does math make sense? And this topic drives me up the wall sometimes when it's actually. So before I start, I should say this is my opinion. This is not the opinion of my board, and I should always start these videos with a disclaimer like that. And I also want to thank you for tuning in again because we had an audio issue a second time here, so I'll make sure it's fixed for next video. But it's funny because when we talk about the math program, I find that people are on one side or the other. There's not a lot of gray areas. So people either, like teachers and professors, and some people really love the math program, the curriculum, and it's been around for 10 years, so there's a lot of proven successes. But then when you talk to a lot of parents, there's a lot of concern that they cannot help their children and they struggle helping their children understand some of the concepts. And so today we want to talk about, does math make sense? And I want to give you a little bit of facts and hopefully start that conversation. So let's talk about the Math Makes Sense program. And so on the screen, these are some of the math books. So what a lot of people actually think is when you talk about Math Makes Sense, it's only a resource. And it's a resource in that teachers do not have to use this only resource. It's a resource that some schools have and some school divisions have. And so this, I'm curious, have you heard about Math Makes Sense? If you have, put a comment below. And I'm curious to see what your success has been with the Math Makes Sense book, and have you had success with that thing? So what I mean by that too is by it being a resource. So I put my board here. If we look at the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Education sets curriculum in our school division or in our province. So what they say is what needs to be taught in math. So they outline all of the criterias and the outcomes and how teachers can identify if students are meeting those things. So what they allow the 28 school boards to do, so if these are all 28 of the school boards, one of these is Regina Public School Boards, one's Regina Catholic, one's Saskatoon Public, and you get the gist, there's 28 of them. Each school board or each school division has the ability to make some changes on the resources that are available to teachers, and that's where you get some differences. So that's where you get some school divisions using Math Makes Sense and some school divisions are not using it. And again, it is only a resource. As I mentioned, it's only a resource that is used in some of the school divisions. So let's talk about curriculum first. So in the past, there's been an emphasis on facts and procedures for computing. And today, there's a balance between developing understanding and computational fluency. So like overall, I think this is an honorable goal in the curriculum, and it's. I have an excerpt though that I want to read from. What is it here? From the grade 5 math outcome, and it states: analyze models of, develop strategies for, and carry out multiplication of whole numbers. Now, the indicator that teachers would use for success says. Recall multiplication facts to 81, including problem solving and calculations of larger products. So overall, I think lots of the curriculum has stayed the same. What some of the differences are that the methods to teach to some of those goals have changed. And parents like myself, I went through high school and elementary, 15 years ago. I'm not able to help my son in some of the new strategies, and that makes it extremely frustrating and extremely hard to go through some of those textbooks. Okay, so let's move into math score. So I want to know, have you heard about these math scores? So before I show them, I want to tell you it's been about 10 years since the curriculum was introduced, with many elements introduced kind of before that, but it's essentially been 10 years, and it's a great time for a potential review. And many citizens have raised these concerns, particularly when we've talked about it's called the Program for International Student Assessment, which is called PISA. It's an international score, essentially, is what it is. And there's some undisputed facts that arose last year from the announcement of the 2015 scores that rank Saskatchewan as the lowest in Canada in the subject of math. So scores declined from the 2012 test to the 2015 test. And in 2012, Saskatchewan ranked 6th out of 10 provinces. Now, our average score was 506, which was 12 points below the Canadian average of 518. Now in 2015, just 3 years later, Saskatchewan ranked 10th out of 10 provinces. And we had an average score of 484, which was now 32 points below the Canadian average of 516. So that is a 20-point drop that happened in 2 years, which is pretty substantial, and that's why it's had a lot of media attention. It is also a point of interest that the gap between the top province and the bottom province actually grew in the 2015 assessments, and Saskatchewan in 2015 was 70 points below the top-ranked province. And so I know some people have talked about those facts, and I just wanted to provide those as well. Okay, so I want to... oh, sorry, there's the sheet I was looking for. There's the 2012 and the 2015 one. And what I want to talk about now is the throne speech. And so with the throne speech, this just happened recently here. And before we talk about what I want to talk about what the throne speech is, sorry. So it's a speech from the throne that occurs on the first day of the new legislature sitting in session, which basically means after summer time off, when they first come back, there's a throne speech. And the throne speech is done by the lieutenant governor that delivers essentially what the goals and the objectives and the direction and the initiatives that the current government wants to take. And so with that, there's essentially a review that was suggested in the throne speech. So I have Kelly Thornton made a comment here. Math only makes sense to kids that are good in math and can see things abstractly. Yeah, Kelly, I've heard that a lot too, and that's why I'm impressed with this throne speech. So in the throne speech, when I got listened to it, it was impressive, and it was how I view it is it's not going to be a massive rehaul to the math program, but at least it's going to be an in-depth look at its effectiveness in preparing our children for the future. And it's been 10 years, so it's a great time to really review it. And I give kudos to the government right now for wanting to take that initiative and review our current math program and just have some of those conversations and open it up, and let's see if this math program is meeting the needs of our students. So similar to what Kelly mentions, that's a similar comment we hear across the board. So now I have a story. This actually comes from one of the schools I represent, and it's a parent telling me about their child in grade 7. They came home with a note from their teacher saying that the parents had to start focusing on the multiplication tables starting at 1s and 2s and 3s. And this is for grade 7s, which blew my mind when I was hearing this. So I would love to hear, do you have similar stories like that? Because I bet you there's lots of those. And I'd like to hear them. Put them in the comments below, because stories like that help engage some of these conversations. And personally, in my house, we have focused on math and building some of those skills. So with my son and my daughter, we're starting to use Monopoly. We've used cards for years now. We have a program on the iPad. It's called Osmo? Osmo. I forgot what it's called. It's called Osmo, which helps him on addition and multiplication and subtraction, and it's a great program. But we have to focus on that, and we see that as a need that I need to make sure my son is ready for math, and we're focusing on that at home. And the funny thing is one of the things is I know a lot of other parents are doing that as well, and they're focused on improving those math skills. So on Gormley, this came up, and I don't want to talk about is Gormley good or bad or whether or not you listen to it, but I love some of the conversations that he has. And in this conversation that he had this week, if you haven't had a chance to, just Google it. You'll be able to find it. He had a couple guests, and he did 2 segments on this. And the 2 segments he brought in an expert from Manitoba, but he also had the Minister of Education, Bronwyn Eyre. And I was actually really impressed with the government's movement towards a review in math and the curriculum, which probably is fine. There's at least a recognition that we need to tweak it. And Minister Eyre went on there, and there's 3 things I got away from her talk and what she said. The first thing was that 1/4 of Canadian kids are attending learning centers outside of school to work on their math skills. So that's 1/4 of Canadian kids. 1 out of every 4 kids you see is in Kumon, Sullivan, Oxford Learning, whatever those programs are. They're getting some type of extra help outside of the classroom. And to me, that's a sense that we need to put some of that focus in there. And the other thing that stood out is comparative results she talked about across Saskatchewan. So right now, a lot of the international tests that are done are just test results for Saskatchewan. They aren't specific to a school division. So we have no idea how Regina kids' results are compared to Saskatoon or Prince Albert. And so she mentioned about comparative results across Saskatchewan. And the third one I got out of it was kind of resistant or resources that are consistent across the school divisions. And I think she did really well on Gormley, and it'd be interesting to see what you thought. And it was an interesting talk. So all in all, I want to say that that this is about starting a conversation, and that's what these videos are about. I'm trying not to get into my opinion versus another, but obviously this one, it's a strong opinion, and I know math is a very important subject that we need to be taken seriously. So, and I hope that we all can recognize that it's maybe not the most perfect system that we have, but it would be what can make it perfect is ensuring that we all have a voice in this. And I'm hoping that the ministry and the government of Saskatchewan allows us to have a voice in that, and that citizens are willing to stand up and help with that process and consult with that process. So hit the like button if you like these videos. I'd be curious to see if you have comments on other ones, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Take care.